Jesus Christ to those who need it most. Our Boots on the Ground Partnership Program physically ministers to those in desperate situations all over the world. The Israel Partnership furthers Kim's legacy of outreach to Israel and Jewish people worldwide. We invite you to become a partner today. Join us today and be part of a community that inspires hope, brings restoration to life, and often healing from the past. Together, we can make a difference, and we thank you for your ongoing support.
And like Christy was talking about the Sea of Galilee, when my dad did a concert on the Sea of Galilee, and I went on the Sea of Galilee, and it was so incredible just to think this is where Jesus walked on the water.
It blows your mind.
It made me want to try walking on the water. Of course, I didn't. My dad used to do that when we were young. He'd try to walk on the water in the pool, but it was a joke. But I did feel that when I was there. I just everything that you've imagined there is in front of you, and it's so much more than what you expect. And so welcome everybody to Conversations, and we have got such an awesome conversation to have today. So what I've done is I have asked Christy Desfontaine to join us today from our Israel Update channel, because our very special guest, Amanda Grace, who is a dear friend, just highly anointed, amazing lady that has become a dear friend of mine. And Amanda has just gone to Israel for the very first time. So she's just returned in the past few days, or in the past week, returned from her very first trip to Israel. And so Christy and I wanted to have a little chat with her, and you guys get to be a part of that. So welcome, Christy and Amanda Grace. And for anybody who doesn't know who Amanda is, there's my beautiful friend. Hello,
Yes,
Amanda.
sweet.
Amanda is a prophetic teacher and the co-founder of Ark of Grace Ministries with her husband, Chris. And the most beautiful couple, just the most amazing couple that have become it's such a, not only dear friends, but an influence on my life. And it's just been amazing to spend time with someone like her. And the first time I met Amanda was at the Reawaken America tour, the very first time I went, and she was one of the first people I met, and I had no idea who she was. But the minute I saw her, God gave me a little nudge and said, go over there. And sure enough, her and I have become very, very dear friends. And so I'm very excited to hear about her trip. I have not talked to her on the phone, so that when we had this conversation, it would be all fresh information for everybody. So again, welcome, Amanda Grace. Thank you, Christy, for joining us. And Amanda, how was your trip, first of all? Because my dad, when he first went to Israel, it changed his entire life, and Christy can tell you about that later. But how was it? How was traveling and arriving there?
Well, hello, my precious, precious friend. This is exciting to be able to share all this with you. And we'll get into me seeing Doobie and running and giving him a huge hug in Israel. We'll get into that. But this was my first time ever leaving the country. First time ever leaving the country and dealing with customs. I will suggest you get the concierge service when you arrive, because they zip you right through customs. And so when you land in Israel, the atmosphere is different. You step off the plane and into the Tel Aviv airport. We started in Tel Aviv. We went to Tiberias, and then we ended up in Jerusalem. And so the atmosphere is different. People are wonderful. Absolutely love them. They have an amazing personality. They're an amazing people. The funniest thing was seeing Chris and Gus have to deal with the food. That was one of the funniest parts of the trip, because there's a lot of kosher dietary laws there. You have a lot of, kosher practicing Jews. And so you're not going to find a cheeseburger, really, or steak and mashed potatoes. You'll find steak, but you won't find it with mashed potatoes. And so I was with Tom Homan, and Sarah Carter was there too. And at one point, Tom Homan looked at me and said, I just want a cheeseburger. It was so cute and funny. So We started in Tel Aviv. Now, Tel Aviv is like New York City. Yes. It was, let me just say,
Yes.
it was pride everywhere in Tel Aviv. Really, I'm not kidding you. And so very bustling with activity, very active. The happiest dogs I've ever seen are in Tel Aviv. They're walking down they have like this big walkway along the beach for people to walk their dogs, and they have a bike path. All the dogs are running up and greeting each other, and people have them, and they're all out and happy, and it was just so adorable.
Oh, you must have loved
Yep,
that.
from our hotel. We stayed at the Herod Hotel, which is on the Mediterranean Sea. And so so that was an experience. The time change, if people don't know, is they're 7 hours ahead of us in New York. So right now, it's kind of like, right now, it's, say if it were like 1:30 p.m., it would be 8:30 p.m. in Israel. So the time change.
So jet lag.
Jet lag, yes. You have jet lag, and then you have the time change to contend with, and my internal clock never kicked over. So I was getting like 4 hours of sleep a night and running on 4 hours of sleep. Praise God, just fine. So I was okay there. And then we went to where it really got interesting is the Sea of Galilee, like going up to Tiberias. And that's where we went to Capernaum, and where Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law of the fever. And so we got to see Capernaum, which was amazing, because once you start to see what is written in the Word of God before your very face, it begins to change. It begins to change you as a believer. It really begins to deepen even more and solidify in you your faith, because you're seeing what's been written in the Word. You're seeing it firsthand. So what we did is we did these little video clips traveling all over Israel. And putting them on our social media. And I think it was Tiberias. It was in Tiberias where we went out, and we actually, part of this was like military. So we had generals come on board. They took us to locations that were kind of sobering to see. Enormous concrete walls. You have the IDF and the police with machine guns. Very, very thick presence on the street, in the markets, and the squares. They are there. They can stop and frisk anybody if they find you suspicious. Praise God that Doobie helped us. We had a wonderful security agent that sometimes made me feel like I was in a James Bond movie. Doing. And so we ended up meeting up with Doobie at one of the restaurants that they stopped at, which happened to be run by the Druze. Now, for those people that don't know what the Druze are, they're an Arab sect that live in Israel, and they actually are in the Israel military too. Like, they will fight for Israel. They live in Israel, they'll fight for that nation. And they believe different, very different than Muslims. And so this was a restaurant that happened to be run by Druze, and that's where Doobie showed up. And in the dining room, and I ran and I just gave him the biggest hug.
And you guys sent me a video, Amanda and Doobie. Doobie, I got a text message, and there they were together. And before Amanda left, I had been on the phone trying to, Doobie, Amanda's coming, and I was so excited.
Such a help in Doobie to us.
Oh, I'm so glad, yes. And then to see the two of you together was just wonderful. So you did connect with Doobie, and for anybody everybody watching, you probably are wondering what we're talking about. When Amanda traveled over there, she had called me to see with help about security, and of course we know Doobie, and all of you who watch Israel Update every Friday and have seen our broadcasts over the years, you know who Doobie is. Doobie Sabo is our correspondent on the ground in Israel for our Israel Update channel. So those of you who maybe watched that, or if you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. But Doobie, I'd been on the phone with him. I said, "You've got to find Amanda." And sure enough, there he found her, and I got the text message with the video, and I was so happy to see them together. And so it was, I did wish I could have been there. And I know, Christy, you probably were wishing the same thing. And Christy, when was it that you went to Israel for the first time?
The first time that I went was in May of 2011, because we were going on tour with your dad in that September for that big God TV tour we did, which was probably my favorite trip that we ever did, because obviously we toured with your dad across the US in 2010. But in preparation for that trip, we were playing, I remember it very clearly, we were playing at the South African Music Awards, obviously it was Pam and I with the Arrows at that point, and we played there, and then we went off to Israel, and that was really where my entire life changed. Obviously, getting to live with your dad, getting to play drums with him, life-changing. And he said to me before I left, he said, something's going to happen to you when you go to Israel. And I said, okay, cool. And it was in May of 2011, and I remember landing for the first time. I did not have the concierge service at that stage, so customs was a very long time. Yes, very long. But I remember just the way I felt. I'd never felt anything like that before, and I felt like I'd come home. And,
yes.
Growing up with the mother I did, I've read through the scriptures from cover to cover. Now I think it's 28 times in my life, and I care very much. I started learning Hebrew after being there, and I've subsequently been 7 times. But that first trip, I just remember seeing signs, knowing immediately where they were, and I nearly threw myself out the car in delight when I saw like Shia Yashuv, and it's one of Isaiah's sons, quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil, and just every different sign, knowing that it meant something, seeing the sign for Jericho, seeing the signs for Jerusalem, and just every place you go, just looking. I remember so clearly one of the things that got me, I remember walking through Mamila Mall, coming up the stairs, and you get to the entrance of the Jaffa Gate, and there's a little man who sits there selling amazing raisin buns for 3 shekels. I ate many of those, too many. But I remember looking at the wall and just weeping and thinking to myself, Nehemiah stood here and looked at this. All these greats stood here and looked at what I'm looking at. And yes, it looks different now, but it's the same place. And this is, yes, God inhabits the whole earth, but Jesus walked here and felt very similarly. In 2011, it was my second trip when I went with your dad. And I remember us being on the Sea of Galilee in the boats, and we had 1,000 people from around the world. So we had so many of these boats on the Sea of Galilee. And your dad pulled up with your mom in a speedboat and came and got on our boat. We were obviously on the one with him. And he was, he looked at me and said something in Afrikaans, complaining about his hair. Complaining about his hair getting sprayed from the Sea of Galilee. And I just, we kind of bantered a little bit on Afrikaans. And then he sang and prophesied from the boat, and we had all these other boats tethered to our boat. And it was just absolutely incredible. And every single trip I did, I've been to 7, like I said, I've been 7 times. The last trip was in 2015. Your dad woke me up at 4 a.m. I'll never forget it. And said, Doris, I need you to go to Israel now. And I said, okay. But it's the Sabbath. He said, I don't care. You need to get with Debbie and you need to make it happen. I said, okay. 3 hours later, I was on a plane flying to Israel, and it was meant to be for 3 days, and I ended up staying there for a month. And that was the last time I was actually able to be there. And obviously after that was when he got sick and the whole thing. But I was there for that month in 2015. I spent the whole of August there, going around doing different teachings, filming for him and the whole thing. And it's hard to put into words for people who haven't been, just how, for want of a better word, magical it feels. And the analogy I always use is it's like Bible Disneyland. Just being able to walk around and know that these places you're in is exactly where Jesus stood. And it moves you in a way that I don't think anywhere else on the earth can. And definitely, yes, my favorite place on the earth.
That's absolutely the truth. And I have to agree with you, because I've only ever been once. I went in 2018 when Trump moved the embassy.
Yes.
So Mom and I went. And it was, I hear you, both of you, when you first arrive, you do definitely feel the atmosphere being different. Yes. And then when you're looking around and you're seeing, things that you've read about and studied and learned in the Bible, that you're actually standing in that place, can be an extraordinary feeling. And I think, yes, when you say the magical, I actually used to say to my daughter, if any time we talked about Israel, I would say the magical land of Israel, because I did have a wonderful time. And it is, for want of a better word, maybe magical is not a good word, but it has that element to it that makes real what we have known and understood and studied our whole lives, and then to actually be standing there is quite astounding. Amanda, did you make it to the wall?
That was one of the most amazing experiences there.
It was for me too. That's what I was asking. Did you make?
We went to the wall on Shabbat, and so which was amazing. And so we had to separate. So thank God our agent was with us, because he went with Chris. Yeah. And so because men and women have to separate at the wall to pray, you cannot pray together. Yes. They don't intermix. And so when you separate and go to the wall, the men are literally dancing in circles, singing praises to God in Hebrew. And the women
Yes,
are singing
yes.
hymns and praises to God in Hebrew on the other side. And the atmosphere is so charged. You walk up and in a way you feel the holiness, and you can feel the power of God moving in that area. It's incredible. And so we went up to the wall. It was amazing. It was one of the most amazing experiences that I had there.
And how was Chris too?
Chris
How was his reaction to being there and seeing those things?
Chris was
What?
amazing. He'd start praying in the spirit. Like Chris would start saying things that just
I'm sure.
and just praying in the spirit. Chris was funny because he gave our agents a run for their money because he kept trying to disappear. And so it was kind of funny. It was good training for them because he would try to slip away and not say a word. And so, but he was totally in awe and amazed by things he saw. The Sea of Galilee, the area where Jericho was. It was just for him, the city of Jerusalem. He saw that and he was just in awe. And so was I when we finally entered Jerusalem. We did see the U.S. Embassy. We did go there. So we saw the U.S. Embassy. We were taken also to see how they protect their borders. Israel is very good at their borders. They have enormous cement walls. They have enormous fences. They're very vigilant about it. They're very good about it. And this is why they don't have many of the problems that we have in this nation right now with people pouring in over the border. Because they're very vigilant about it. And a couple of really interesting experiences. They took us to a secure military location where one of 6 tunnels that Hezbollah dug back around the time of 2006, secretly dug, 120 feet long, to get into Israel. And they kidnapped 3 Israeli soldiers and killed them in Lebanon. And Israel, found the tunnels after that. And they either destroyed them halfway by explosive or they pumped cement into them. And so we were taken to one of the tunnels. And so you have a lot of IDF with semi-automatic weapons guarding that area, because about only a mile away, I believe, is a Hamas village or a Hezbollah type village. And so basically it's 120 feet deep, and people were allowed to go in 60 feet, 45 meters to the tunnel to look around. Now, I didn't take Chris in because the oxygen starts to deplete down there, and I was a little concerned about, him with seizures. So we went and looked, though. We went and looked and saw the tunnel. And so that was very sobering. Like, my goodness, these are diligent sociopaths they're dealing with here. I mean, this is crazy that they dug this over a 5-year period, these 6 tunnels. So that was something that was fascinating. Also, I got to do something which was really kind of neat for me and an honor. So our agent who was with us, Isaac, happened to be on Netanyahu's detail at one point. And so he arranged for Chris and I to go to the Knesset, the parliament, and meet Danny Danon and his advisor Aviv, who's in Netanyahu's party. And so praise God, a door opened there and we met with them and we have a rapport, which is wonderful. And so we have an open door there now, which is wonderful. He wrote a book called Into the Lion's Den, Danny Danon. So he gave us a copy and he wrote to us, Together We Will Win. And so it was really nice. And so we got to talk about the United States, what's going on in the United States, what's going on with our borders, what's happening, about, the difference between Israel having to fight for their land from the beginning in the United States. And so we had a wonderful meeting. So that was something really special that we got to do while we were there.
Oh, that is. And, I have to say, I've been waiting to hear how it went for you. And I did sort of wait to call you because I wanted it to be as fresh as possible when we did it here in the interview, so everybody could sort of share that in that excitement, because it is so exciting. And now, how long were you there for? You were there for a little while, like a week or 10
days.
Is that correct? 12 days. I thought so.
It felt like 5 months. And it was...
Yes, and then you probably didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I know that happened to me. I really didn't want to
It
leave.
does. It starts pulling at your heartstrings, and then it's coming time to leave, and it's hard. And in Jerusalem for me was fascinating. Not only because of the old city, but they take you to the Via Dolorosa was one of the hardest things for me. I will tell you, spiritually, that was very difficult. You could still feel it. Walking the Via Dolorosa, you could still feel the heaviness and the gravity of what happened there. And so we did that. Also, I'll tell you something interesting that happened to me on top of Mount Carmel. We were looking over the Megiddo. We were looking over the valley of Megiddo at the top of Mount Carmel, where Elijah also had the showdown with the prophets of Baal and Ashtoreth. I felt electricity shooting through my body on top of Mount Carmel. Twice it hit me. Twice it went through, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is that? So the atmosphere there, and Doobie even said that that's one of the places where it's almost like he described it as an open portal. It's one of those places there. He said that, and I believe he said the Jordan River too, which I got to baptize people in the Jordan River that were with us that wanted to be baptized. So I went into the river and we did that and we filmed that. So, but that's happened to me on top of Mount Carmel.
Now that's, Mount Carmel is actually, especially in the time we're in, it's a very significant location then. My dad did a concert from Mount Carmel, and he was prophesying about the politicians of Baal and about a generation of people who would rise up against this spirit that he was seeing. And a lot of what he was seeing. And when we went to Israel, I'm just going to tell you this because you mentioned Mount Carmel, and it was so incredible. So when we were in Israel, we went to Mount Carmel. It was one of also the stops on the tour we were doing. And I had prepared a prophecy of my dad's just to read because I was discussing what he'd prophesied. So we were on the road, so we weren't playing a video. I had to actually read it. And so we were sitting there on Mount Carmel, and I pulled out the prophecy. I had it on an iPad or something, and I pulled it up, and I was reading through it before we were going to film so that I was prepared in what we were going to talk about. And I realized as I sat there reading the prophecy that it was the exact date that my dad had been on Mount Carmel 10 years before he'd been there. So he'd been there 10 years before that. This is 2008, so 18 that I was there. So 2008, he was there. It was the exact date.
Wow.
So I sat down and I said, my dad on such and such a date prophesied. And I said, what's today's date? And they said, oh, it's whatever the day, I forgot now which specific date. And I looked at the date on the prophecy. I said, I'm actually sitting here 10 years later to the day reading what was prophesied by my dad, who was at that point already passed away. It was amazing. And I found that, the spiritual significance of that location in accordance with what we are facing now was so appropriate. So I'm so glad you brought up Mount Carmel. What are some other places you went to? Like, what was your tour? You said you started in Tel Aviv. You did go to the Sea of Galilee. Yes. You did go to Jerusalem and the Jordan River.
Well, yes, we did. So we did. We were in Tiberias, and then we headed to Jerusalem, and we also went to the Dead Sea. And floating in the Dead Sea is one of the weirdest experiences of my life. I'm not even. You float. I'm not kidding you. You just sit back and you float. There's no way for you to drown.
That's incredible.
The Dead Sea.
And I didn't go in when we went. I walked around. I think I wasn't dressed appropriately, something like that. And so a lot of people did, and my husband did. He did. Everybody was floating in the water. And Mom and I have been looking also because they're saying that there's fresh water going into the Dead Sea now, a little fresh. I don't know if there's how it's happening technically, but there is supposedly some fresh water coming in, and some, as was prophesied. And so we've actually been looking quite a bit at the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea, as far as biblical prophecy and things are happening now. Anyway, so we do have also, I haven't forgotten you there, Christy, in the background. Did you have anything you wanted to say? You sort of disappeared there. We haven't forgotten you.
Oh, fear not, fear not.
There she is.
Yeah, no, I was just sort of reminiscing a little bit here, because it's been so many years since I've been back to Israel, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm in the middle of a green card process. And, when I wasn't able to go with you guys in 2018 because of that. And we're obviously very excited and looking at going sometime, and I can't wait for this all to just be resolved, and just really trust in God that this green card comes through, because it has been a very long journey. But just thinking about it and just, I don't know, I guess remembering all the moments with your dad in different places. When you were talking about Mount Carmel, I remember being with him there because it was one of the tour stops we did in September of 2011. And I remember us going there, and I remember very clearly him having this very intense moment on top of the mountain with people, everywhere we went, there were just buses trekking with us, because, we had 1,000 people coming wherever we went. And he had a major moment, and I remember it was almost like at one point he got struck to the ground and just lay there. And I don't remember exactly what it was that he was prophesying, because I kind of ran over. I was sort of behind him, and then I kind of ran over, and then I was like, okay, wow, this is something that's going on that I am not going to encroach on. So I just kind of stepped back and waited. But I just saw God so clearly speaking to him and working through him. As he always did, but just there was something different about when we were in Israel. There was something different about the way he would prophesy. There was something different about the things that he would say even when we were there. And looking back, just thinking about, I'm so grateful that I got to be there with him for that, because Israel's obviously my favorite place in the world. My heart was left in Jerusalem, and I've never got it back. But just I'm incredibly thankful that in my lifetime I was able to be there with him and have the tour that we had, because I think it was probably the greatest experience of my life. And it's something I would love to see us be able to do again, is take a bunch of our people and go, and kind of my secret dream would be to sort of recreate the tour that we had and go to the same places, and then add a couple of places that I know he'd wanted to do, because we were talking about the tour we were planning in 2016 before he got ill. And I would love for us to be able to sort of recreate that and read some of the prophecies that he gave at those different locations. I think that could be a really awesome thing to do, because obviously we know that prophecy is outside of time. And so he might have prophesied it years ago, but these words still stand and resonate the same way the prophets of old do. So that's, just what I was sitting here thinking about.
I do think that it is. There's something about when you stand somewhere, and even if you're just like I was doing, just reading what was prophesied, it's projecting that into the atmosphere of the moment. And so time is such an interesting thing, because like I said before, there I sat when I went in 2018, there I sat there, and it was exactly, I didn't know that until I was standing there, but it was exactly 10 years to the day. And, that I would be standing in the same place as my dad, and then not re-prophesying, but reading what was prophesied into the atmosphere and out. And I think that's something very important in the prophetic, is the saying of, and timing and where. Those things are key, when you're dealing with the prophetic. And so, especially like even doing a baptism in the Jordan River, like you were doing, Amanda, that location, there's something about that. You were talking about, Doobie was talking about, the portals and different. There is something to that, and it's not just conspiracy.
No, it's not.
Theory. It's not like in a cartoon where the door opens up, and it's not like that. But there is spiritually, there are things that are occurring, and you will notice them. So when you go to somewhere like Israel, I think that becomes heightened, because it definitely did it. My dad, it really brought out so much that he began to prophesy, and the level he was at definitely escalated once he had recognized the importance of Israel and then gone there to prophesy and to minister there. And I'm sure it must be the same for you, Amanda, in that you function in the prophetic, and then you're taken into this place that has so much stamped into the ground and the land there for so many thousands of years. And then again, the borders. I don't want to forget this, actually. Christy's talking about her green card, and she's talking about a green card because she's doing things the way you're supposed to do them. She's legally immigrating to the country. She's not
And I've been living
running
here
over
since,
the border.
I've been living here since 2017. I've paid every tax bill, done everything by the book,
Right.
and it's still, I'm surrounded by friends and people still, this is something I say and I'm not going to rant about it, but we're still dealing with a place where it's the American dream. It's not the Canadian dream. It's not the Swiss dream. It's the American dream. People want to be here because this is the greatest country. It's fantastic. There's no place is perfect, but at the end of the day, if somebody is trying to run into a country, that generally means something good is going on there. And so as someone who's been living here since 2017, done everything completely correct by the book, it's incredibly frustrating knowing that because there's an overflow and a drain on resources, someone like, I lived here in 2010 with your parents, Donna. I lived in their house, and your dad obviously was supporting us at that time and whatever. But like the goal and intention to move to the US has been here since 2010. It was something your dad and I spoke about all the time. He wanted me here. He wanted me to move over here and he wanted me to split my time between here and Jerusalem. That's what he wanted. And so for all these years I've been waiting. It's cost a fortune to do all the applications. And you sit at the mercy of somebody who might just have had a fight with their wife that morning and decide that they might deny you. And I don't get free anything. I'm doing everything by the book and there's no special treatment. And it is incredibly frustrating when you look around and, other people do it. And I understand everybody's got their reasons, but it is very difficult when you look around and go, well, it's unfair. It feels unfair, should I say, when people who aren't doing it the right way end up getting rewarded. And then people, like us who are sitting here waiting, desperate to have a better life for their kids. Like, my daughter's been here since... we left South Africa when she was 16 months old. She hasn't known anything different.
Exactly.
And we're making the sacrifice. None of our families here. You guys are the closest thing to family we have. And, even you and your mom now in Nashville and whatever. But, we don't have that. And we're making the sacrifice so my daughter can grow up here instead of growing up in South Africa. And it's a point of frustration, I won't lie, where you just go, man, I'm doing everything the right way, and you still just don't know what's going to happen. So if anybody has any green card faith, please send it my way. And if anybody knows anybody in the USCIS, please send it my way as well. We could use some Daniel level favor around about now. I'm just saying we could
make a way, Christy. That's going to get put in front of the right person.
Thank you. I received
that application is going to be put in front of a very specific individual that has gone through things you've gone through.
Thank you. I received that.
There you go.
I receive it.
There you go. There's your promise, my friends.
Take it.
Both of these ladies are my friends, so it's lovely to see
I'll
this.
take it. Thank you.
And I see, because I know what Christy's been through, and I'm pressing that point right now because we are seeing so many unfair things going on around us, and I know that for people it's very difficult. And then when you go to somewhere like Israel, if they don't have their borders the way they do, they will not be alive. No. Is this correct, ladies?
Yes.
Am I correct in saying?
It is very correct. They are very vigilant about their borders. Some of these cement walls are like over 20 feet tall. That they have to protect them from outside enemies that are always trying to come in. They also have checkpoints. So they have checkpoints where they have the IDF and police there that are armed with semi-automatic weapons, and they have to search. The cars coming through these checkpoints into Israel, these people have to be searched and they have to be checked and they have to make sure that they're not coming in for nefarious reasons. So we saw that also. They took us to different points of the border just to show us the fences too. Sometimes they have double fences also to protect, and they are kind of electrified on the top. They have these special fences that they made where if something touches the fence, they'll know if it's an animal, a child, a person really trying to get over. Because, they're a very moral army. They don't want to hurt innocent bystanders. And so they really try everything they can to mitigate that and only deal at hand with those that want to harm and terrorize the people of Israel. And then they have these sections, this A section and this B section, and one of them is under total control of the Palestinians, and the other one Israel has total control of, and the other one is mixed. And so they have that also that they deal with.
Also, since the construction of these various borders, because I've been to the borders of Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, the Palestinian areas. I've been to those borders with Doobie, actually, all of them. And we've trekked into the middle of various wildernesses together. But, since they constructed these various walls and fences, terrorist activity decreased by 93%.
That's right.
From when they constructed them. And also, like Amanda was saying with the checkpoints, everybody has to go through the checkpoints. The soldiers have to go through the checkpoints. Visitors have to go through the checkpoints. Israeli citizens have to go through the checkpoints. It's not segregated. Everybody goes through the same thing, and it's for the sake of the protection of the country. And obviously, when you don't have nefarious intent, you have absolutely no problem submitting to a security checkpoint. You just understand, okay, this is going to take me a couple extra minutes on either side of this particular area of travel. But it really isn't a segregated system. It's just, hey, everybody's kind of got to go through the same thing in order to preserve the security and safety of the nation. And they are an incredible army, like Amanda was saying, particularly moral. And, you know, the entire nation is ready on guard and ready to fight because it's mandatory military service, 2 years for the girls, 3 years for the boys. And so many go on to take up careers. But just looking at the young people of Israel versus the young people of more, let's say, Western nations, they grow up because they go from school straight into the army and then they go on to do their careers. And so you've got these young people kind of running the country in so many ways, just working, and they're mature. And they're contributing members of society, and they're doing incredible things. And it really is amazing to see what happens when security is at the foremost of a nation's, I suppose, priority. You end up with a very mature group of humans who are young. And that's something that I think is quite impressive.
So if they didn't have all of those systems in place, the checkpoints, the border walls, the military stuff, if they didn't have all of that, what would happen to Israel?
It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
It would be ransacked, taken over, destroyed. The people, would be, to put it in layman's terms, they would be, killed, rounded up. Because they're so determined to destroy this land and this people that God gave this land to. They've been fighting for this land from the beginning. They know what it's like to fight for their land. It's ingrained in them. And when I had met with Danny, Dan, and Aviv, I was talking to them about the United States of America, and I said, you know what they're doing at our border right now is they're pouring in? I said, we've got people pouring in from China, from African nations, from Central America, from South America. I said, there is tons of issues with drugs and sex trafficking across the border. I said, and they're doing catch and release. I said, imagine in your nation, if you did catch and release, what would happen to your nation? And he said, we wouldn't have one.
That's exactly right.
It's true.
And this is what I've heard. This is what I've heard. And I have been there and seen, obviously, the security, the border, the military presence, the checkpoints. And, until you've actually been there, it can be a bit difficult to imagine. So I think it gets very easy for people to be propagated against them, obviously in America and in Western countries, there's sort of this political divide over the view of how Israel handles things. And then, obviously Palestine is over there, and you see people trying to help the situation on the other end. But I think the point that has to be driven in is if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be. And I think that makes the point for all the other points. To me, it does. That they're not... they're doing what they have to do in order to survive, which then when you look at what's happening here in America, it is a bit startling, because you think they're doing things like catch and release, and then you look at somebody like Christy, who is doing the legal way, and it is extraordinarily difficult and so easy. So pray that God helps all of us with in this time, is because, again, like Amanda said, the child trafficking and the drugs and people just swarming into our country at an unprecedented rate. It's becoming a little bit more obvious that there's an agenda coming from a top. And so that's something that we always keep our eye on. And it's something Mom and I have really been looking at. Yeah. Stuff like World Economic Forum, things like that. The one world government agenda and what is in the Bible. So I just wanted to make that point because, and I didn't realize I wanted to even make it till we were sitting down here, is that if you look at, there's Christy with her trying to doing it the right way. And it's been very long and painful. And so again, receiving what Amanda saw for you there, Christy. We receive that.
Yeah,
that
we do.
you will be rewarded for doing this the right way. That God is not forgotten.
Yeah.
And He has got a plan, and we always remember that.
Yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to ask Amanda before we go?
I feel
We're
like
going to run out of time.
I feel like
before
we
we do
covered
that, I want to.
everything, so I'm so happy with it. I feel like we heard
Okay,
all
good.
the
And
things.
you,
so.
Amanda.
Now, I'll tell you one more thing that's very pertinent for now in the coming months. So one of the generals came and addressed us, and he said, at any given point, we have 200,000 rockets that are pointed at us from Hezbollah, Hamas, and terrorist organizations and proxies for Iran. He said, which we can deal with. He said the issue becomes 200,000 rockets pointed at Israel under the umbrella of nuclear capabilities that we can't. And this is why what the United States government is doing with Iran and trying to make a deal again and trying to do this is going to change the course of how Israel reacts. Israel will bring in a very strong, forceful response to this. They have to. At this point. So I'm just saying, watch for this, because this is coming because of moves that the United States, Iran, and other nations are making right now.
Well, I will say that, and this is something that gives me solace, is that my dad prophesied quite a bit about some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff. And specifically Netanyahu, he said that Netanyahu was a prophet, obviously not a prophet like my dad, but that he would be a mouthpiece for God, and that God would use Netanyahu. And so we do continue to pray for him. But also about the enemies of Israel. God revealed many things to my dad about that. And, some of it doesn't make sense still. But I found that with prophecy, and we all know this, anyone who's seasoned in this will know that, and I've learned this the hard way, that's for sure, is that you can't rush to judgment on things sometimes just because certain things may not make sense. It's often an indication for me that we should wait and watch. And then in that time, we are beginning to understand in a much fuller way what that piece of land actually means in the grand scheme of all of humanity. And so you see the state of it now today, and you look at what was prophesied in the Bible and through people like my dad and even yourself, that God is, God has not forgotten us and is in control. And this is something that it can get difficult in this day and age for us to grasp that, because you do, as we've walked through the past, I would say 7 years, even longer, as it's culminated to this place that we're in right now, and this is not over. We're still moving towards it. And I know my dad was seeing about Iran, but there was something else also he was seeing that they should watch out for.
There's another,
particularly Russia and the alliances they're making now, and how that could impact Israel later on, is what he was seeing. So I do try to keep that perspective, no matter how overwhelming information may become. And so I just felt the need to say that right now, because there's so many opinions about Israel, and I feel that really until you've been there, you won't really understand it. My experience of seeing the wall for the first time was very, very intense experience. My dad had only just passed away, and so it hadn't been very long, and there was a lot of emotion attached to him and his passing and my grief, and it was very healing for me to go to the wall. So I was so happy you got to see the wall and see those certain things. And like Christy was talking about the Sea of Galilee, when my dad did a concert on the Sea of Galilee, and I went on the Sea of Galilee, and it was so incredible just to think this is where Jesus walked on the water.
It blows your mind.
It made me want to try walking on the water. Of course, I didn't. My dad used to do that when we were young. He'd try to walk on the water in the pool, but it was a joke. But I did feel that when I was there. It was I just, everything that you've imagined there is in front of you, and it's so much more than what you expect. And so you're going to be doing a trip to Israel. Is that correct?
Yes, next year, May 1st to the 10th. We have sign up, I believe, on our website. our new website, arcofgrace.org. And so we also on our social media have the clips that we played from Israel. We have the website in the description that people can actually register now.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
Okay. So that was that was the next thing I was going to ask you is I know that you were putting out videos.
Yes.
So people can go, how can they find you on social media first?
Okay, so they can go,
Where
they can go to youtube.com/arc, which with a K of Grace Ministries. We are Arc of Grace Ministry on Facebook, as well as Rumble Arc of Grace Ministries. And then there's our app in the App Store, Arc of Grace. You can download it.
Perfect. So everybody, if you are thinking about visiting Israel, Amanda's going to be going.
We're going to be leading a tour. Myself and Dr. Ronnie Wexler, who was there this time with us. Jexit, Michelle Terrace, who heads up Jexit, was also with us on this trip. But myself and Dr. Ronnie Wexler are going to be kind of helping lead this.
Oh, well, that sounds great. And you said you talked to Doobie and he possibly could
Oh,
be
yes.
joining you. And that would be
Yes.
lovely.
We're in the works with Doobie. This is going to be amazing.
Good.
We get this going. This is going to be absolutely incredible to have Doobie joining us.
Oh, I think
There's no one
maybe I
better.
could join
I
you.
would
might.
love it if you all joined us. We would have so much fun.
There's no one better than Doobie. Let me just say that I have spent many an hour in the air and upon the land with that man in that country, and he is an endless well and fountain of knowledge. That's very
He is.
awesome. Yeah, he's spectacular.
It's my dad found Doobie. My dad found Doobie on accident. He
did.
when he first, I think it was one of the first trips to Israel.
Yeah, it
the
was.
first one. I don't remember.
It was.
Christy. Yes, Christy would know. He didn't.
It was
he
the lobby
meet
of a
him in
hotel.
the lobby, and
It was the lobby of a hotel,
Right.
and it was an accident. And,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Doobie's tour didn't show up, and my dad's tour guide didn't show up, and the two of them found each other in the lobby of the hotel.
yes.
And there
That
it was,
was-
and
it
they
was
became
destiny.
friends from then on. That was a God moment,
That
and
was
so I'm so happy Doobie got to see you in Israel as well. And I'd been on the phone, Doobie, you got to find Amanda, and he did. So I was so happy to see that. And anybody watching, if you don't know who Doobie is, you can see him on our Israel Update channel every Friday. We have Christy, who's here with us today. She runs the Israel Update channel, and Doobie is our correspondent on the ground there. So we get to give to you and bring to you unfiltered news from the ground in Israel as things are happening. And of course, Doobie is a very informed person.
Yes.
You know, he's just the best of the best of the best. And
Yes.
so, again, I'm so glad he got to see you, Amanda. And then, you know, whatever is coming up in the future, then, you know, you guys can know now that the House of Destiny and Ark of Grace, this is something that we focus on and that we, you know, we truly believe is crucial in the season that we are in and the time we're living in.
It is.
So anybody can find you, Amanda, on the social media platforms, search Ark of Grace. I know you're on Twitter because that's the one. I don't use a lot of them, like actually use a lot of them. Like we post things and we are present everywhere, and I'll prepare things that can be posted. But I don't actually use many of them except Twitter is one I use. And so I see you on Twitter, Amanda, and I love to. Amanda will go live on Twitter sometimes, and when she goes live, it is wonderful. Just you know, God really uses Amanda very similarly to the way in which she used my father, especially when it comes to prophetic teaching. She's very anointed. That what you just did on Samson before your Israel trip, where you were speaking about Samson, just excellent.
Praise
So I do recommend to everybody that you take some time to have a look at what God is doing through our friend Amanda, because she's truly anointed and has been a gift to my life.
Oh,
And it was just an honor to have you here. And I'm just do send my love to Chris.
I will.
And tell him I'm just so happy you got to go to Israel. And hopefully at some point in time, I can't commit now to May, but maybe we can have a look, because it would be lovely. We could.
I would.
Lovely. And
love
I know
that.
we've been wanting to ever since COVID. Through the COVID thing, we had to sort of hold our horses a little bit to see what was going on. At first, we didn't know what the heck COVID was, and then, you know, Israel was very strict, as I understand. They were, but now that things have eased up a little bit, now we can start to look again at return.
Yeah, it's laxed a lot. And just so you know, I brought the mantle to Israel with me. I brought your dad's mantle with me to Israel. It was with me the whole time.
great. And for anybody who doesn't know, at the beginning of this year, we did the Reawaken America tour with Clay Clark and General Flynn in Nashville, Tennessee, and that was in January. And I brought Amanda one of my dad's mantles, and it was the purple one. And there was a whole experience I had where I prayed about it, and Dad had a box full of mantles that he wore. They were his personal ones. And I just stuck my hand in and I grabbed and I pulled it out, and it pulled out the purple one, and God said royalty to me. And I knew I had to put it over Amanda. And I brought one for Chris as well, which was the black one. And they were the exact same. He must have bought them together, but they weren't together in the box. So that was another little miracle that happened there. And it was such an honor for me to be able to give that to you. And I don't do that. I never do that, but I knew I had to. And so that's what she's talking about when she says she brought her mantle. It was my dad's purple mantle, and I put it on Amanda Grace in Nashville, and she took it to Israel. And so as you can see, the effects of what you do in this life, even when you are gone, like my father is now in heaven, my dad, what he did, the footprints of that are left behind, and there we can walk in those footprints and make new memories and understand things in a greater way. And our walk with God is enriched, and our faith is strengthened. And this is something that we all really need right now. And obviously not everybody can go to Israel. It's not that easy for everybody to do that. And so when you are supporting a ministry who is doing that, you get to be a part of something without actually having, because you can't go for whatever reason, you may not be able to go there. You'll see many ministries, especially prophetic ones, are doing this kind of thing right now. And that's God. God is orchestrating that for a purpose. And so, again, thanks for joining me, Amanda.
Thank you, my
it's
friend.
so lovely to have you. And Christy, thank you for coming and joining the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you both.
And then again, if you're looking for Amanda Grace, look for Ark of Grace on all social media platforms, and the app and the website arkofgrace.org. Is that correct, Amanda?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me. And everybody, thank you for joining us again today for another Conversations. We'll see you next time.
My name is Jane Clement, and I am the president of the House of Destiny Network.
My name is Donna Clement Petrushka, and I am the vice president of the House of Destiny Network. My dad used to have a thing called $5 in your face offering. And he did that because he understood that sometimes people might be sitting there saying, well, I only have a little bit to give. But I often use the analogy of a car engine. You know, everybody feels like maybe they're not too important, or maybe their little part they're playing is small, or what can I do as I see these things going on around me? And you may think that that's a little bit, but it's a huge amount when we come together and support one another. And so just as little as $5 can help us with our missions. It can help us with just keeping these prophecies, all these prophecies that came through my dad, coming to you. And it takes quite a bit to be able to find it and edit it and present it. And so there's a whole staff of people that work very, very hard to make sure that we can get this information to you. And it is vital in this season because of what was prophesied. And so, again, you may feel that $5 is not much, but it's something. And then you are a part of something and a part of doing something where you may feel like it's, you know, there's nothing you can do. There is something you can do. You can support the people who God has put at the front lines, who are actively making a difference.
I first met Kim in 1978. The price of gold back then was $200 an ounce. Today, it's gone up to $2,000 an ounce.
I can tell you inflation is a real thing because in a very short period of time, just living in the state of Tennessee, I had moved from California. I could see the difference when I moved here, just in the grocery store, and since 2020, the way prices have risen, it's not much different than when I lived in California now.
To schedule a consultation with Beverly Hills Precious Metals, go to bh-pm.com and make an appointment today.
One thing about Mike Lindell, and this is going back to many, many years, we like to support people like him because, number one, he's a Christian in the marketplace, which is something that my dad not only prophesied a lot about, but really truly believed in. And so for many years, our ministry has supported Mike Lindell for being a Christian, but also supporting one another It makes us stronger against those big tech people who are backed by billions of dollars, that together we can make a difference and get a message out there.
By using the promo code Kim Clement, you're not only supporting Mike Lindell, but you're also helping us reach the unreachable, touch the untouchable, and reach the world with the gospel.
This was sacred to God. This is exactly why I need some action from my people. Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be with you.